Good morning, everyone. I'm especially pleased and honored to be here on the first Sunday of the year. It feels auspicious somehow. And my gratitude always to Dr. Edward for inviting me to be so. It feels like today is in some ways the last day of a very interesting couple of weeks, holidays and such. This last couple of weeks, I noticed that time got a little strange. Time off and days off and traveling and families. It felt almost like an altered state of consciousness in a way. And food got weird. Now, I enjoy peanut butter, saltwater taffy as much as the next guy, but when you get it as a gift by the pound, and it sits on your desk, I noticed that it didn't sit there nearly as long as I thought it might. Less than a week. I know. But if we're lucky, this odd and amazing midwinter time of solstice and New Year's and holidays, of something new beginning and something coming to an end, is also a very good time to think about things. There's a little space for that. It's a point of demarcation. We've agreed that it's a good time to take stock, to consider what's working and what's not, out with the old, and with the new, because we know that it serves us, these times of reconsideration. So that's one of the reasons we like New Year's, and we're not the only ones. Health clubs love New Year's. Do you know that health clubs sell more memberships in January than any other time of the year to people who never cross the threshold of their business? It's an amazing phenomenon. The diet industry loves New Year. Exercise equipment, take your pick. This year I will get in shape. This year I will lose weight. I will be a better person. I will, at least for a couple of weeks, I will. Hey, you laugh, it's already the 5th. How you doing? But it's a good practice, this periodic reconsideration. It helps us to stay current, to reassess for ourselves our values and priorities, to ask ourselves, is the way that I'm living in alignment with my current values and priorities? Am I living my heart's desire? It's a good question. I will. But what if it's not about will at all? What if the reason that we have had so many less than spectacularly successful New Year's resolutions is that we've gotten the equation just a little bit wrong? Perhaps there was a slight misunderstanding. What if instead of trying to will something to happen, the opportunity, the invitation instead is to allow something to happen? It's got a completely different feel, doesn't it? I realized as I considered this in the last week that I may have been unintentionally limiting myself, trying to will something to happen, because my will is based on what I've experienced from this point backwards. My will is based on yesterday's values and priorities. And the power of that will draws only from my own encapsulated brilliance alone, you see. It's me against something. Me against the world. What if instead these seasons of reconsideration are about becoming aware of something more? An invitation, a divine invitation. One that not so much pushes from behind, but draws from before us. Again, a different feel. What if instead of trying to make something happen, the opportunity is to allow something to happen? In the last couple of weeks, I've become aware of and had conversations with a whole bunch of people that are feeling, well, cranky. Or something, out of sorts, melancholy, holiday blues, restless, depleted, wrung out, depressed, kind of sick in some way or another. Showing up in all kinds of ways, have you noticed? It seems like kind of a widespread event, and there's a common theme, a common kind of dissonance. Widespread crankiness. And we think something is wrong. We assume something is wrong, but I've come to the conclusion that perhaps it's by design. So for lack of a better term, I've decided to call it divine discontent. We get to do that. Consider it in a different way, perhaps. It makes sense. The holiday hubbub is now past. There's nothing under the tree. In fact, the tree is in the front yard or by the curb, and there are a few things more depressing than that. Company has gone home, events are concluded, all the planning and running around and busyness is done. And here we find ourselves coming down the backside of doing to a place of being. The visual that I got a couple of weeks ago, it's kind of like a comet that has slowed way down, and the whole tail is now catching up with us. There's stuff to be considered. We've been moving so fast, we've successfully stayed ahead of it for a couple of months. But now here we find ourselves, feeling a bit in between, and a brand new year is already beneath our feet. And we're wondering what we're going to do with it. Sensing that something better, something greater might be inviting us. Something is stirring within us, and it's informing us. Divine discontent. These conversations that I've had invariably have started with a focus about what's wrong. Money, relationship, vocation, odd relatives, odd friends. Wishing for something that isn't, some version of that. And all that wrongness is a great distraction. It's a great way to deflect our attention, but it's an old way of thinking. And we think a health club is the answer. Change something that already is. But it's not about what it first appears to be about. There's something more important underneath. The reason that health club mentality doesn't work is because it's not about simply rearranging what has been. Einstein said we can't solve our problems with the same kind of thinking that created them. It's kind of like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It doesn't work particularly well. There's something more going on. And if we can sit with that divine discontent for just a bit, be with it, unpack it, see what's underneath, we might get past what has been to what is trying to be. I'm doing that for myself, and I'm doing it with other people. And here's what I'm finding. There is a deep desire within us that's seeking more space in our minds and hearts, in our lives. Spaciousness as a spiritual practice. Can we even imagine? I'm more and more convinced that this is a key factor, a key ingredient. We are so jammed up, so busy, so tasky-oriented, dashing from point A to point B as fast as possible. And if a little bit of space gets created, let's jam something else in there, shall we? spaciousness as a spiritual practice. Because into that space pours what has never been, infinite possibility, pure potentiality. It can meet us in a different way. It doesn't have to be managed or made to happen or figured out or efforted. What if we just make more space in our being? Something within us is pushing up against the constructs that we've created, pushing up against old fear of judgment, against beliefs about roles and responsibility. That's been an interesting one to sit with recently. I can't do that. I have a role and I'm responsible. Really? This something is demanding more space. It's almost begging for our attention. Divine discontent for permission to be real, to be creative and wild, and take some risks. Try new things. Try showing up like we never have before. Easier in our minds and bodies and hearts and souls. Spacious, bigger, freer. Something is desperately trying to get our attention. At the conclusion of one of these conversations, the person I was speaking with came up with an affirmation for herself. I asked her if I could share it. She said, I give life permission to make its way through me and as me, and I surrender to the radical love that is my true identity and life path. I give life permission to make its way through me and as me, and I surrender to the radical love that is my true identity and life path. That's an intention. Another person I talked to came up with an intention. I listen to my inner voice and I follow fearlessly where it leads. And then I was talking with one just this morning about the same thing, and she said, it just sucks. She said, I know something is going on in there. I know there's something that's informing me. I know. We know. We don't have to make it happen. Something is stirring individually and collectively within us. It's an invitation to step more fully into our own yes. That's what it is. Whatever that yes looks like, to move past old limitations and fears that have held us back. Self-imposed limitations, as it turns out. Divine discontent is stirring the pots in our minds and hearts and souls, and it's looking for places to be. It's looking for space to be, to move past what has been into what it is desperately trying to be through and as you and I. This is a season of great transformation. We've been talking about it for a handful of years now. We've all been wondering, sensing it. What if this is it? What if this season of discontent is it? What if it's right now, this week, this year? What if this is the time and we are the people? The Buddha says, the trouble is you think you have time. I don't know about you, but I'm getting more and more aware of time as it passes. The trouble is you think you have time. This is the time. We are the people. The stirring and the depths of our being is just the spirit of life itself, trying to get our attention. Nothing has gone wrong. What if all it needs is our permission, a willingness and the courage to say yes? I say yes to life, and I let it have its way with me, whatever that looks like, and wherever it takes me. I say yes to life, whatever that looks like, and wherever it takes me. A little edgy, isn't it? bumps up against those roles and responsibilities, doesn't it? What are we aching to be? I had occasion this last week to revisit a document drafted some years ago that I find to be very inspiring and worth revisiting on a pretty regular basis. It happens to be a document drafted by our leadership at Centers for Spiritual Living, our parent organization. It's called the Global Heart Vision. I found it to be a lovely way to start my year, and I thought I would share it with you. We envision the emergence of the global heart to balance and give the further evolution of humanity as stewards, to balance and guide the further evolution of humanity as stewards of our planet and all its inhabitants. We see a world free of homelessness, violence, war, hunger, separation, and disenfranchisement. We see a world in which there is generous and continuous sharing of heart and of resources. We envision a world in which forgiveness, whether for errors, injustices, or debts, is the norm. We see a world in which borders are irrelevant. We see a world which has renewed its emphasis on beauty, nature, and love through the resurgence of creativity, art, and aesthetics. We see a world in which fellowship with all life prospers and connects through the guidance of spiritual wisdom and experience. We envision a world in which we live and grow as one global family that respects and honors the interconnectedness of all life. And we see Centers for Spiritual Living as a global community of inspired individuals caring for and about each other and the entire planetary family, thereby bringing the gift of active compassion and kindness to the world. A global community of inspired individuals. That's us. It's not just a nice idea. It's us. And it's now. Divine discontent. What is the invitation? What if this is the perfect time for divine discontent? Are we paying attention, and are we willing, really willing, to follow where it leads? In the book that we're considering this month, Wayne Dyer's Power of Intention, he says, when you know that you're in charge of your intentions, then you will come to know that you are in charge of your entire world. See, he's telling us we're not just doing this work on our own behalf, we're doing it on behalf of each other. When you know that you're in charge of your intentions, then you will know that you're in charge of your entire world. So here we find ourselves on the first Sunday of a brand new year, all clean and fresh and new. Well, 5 days, there may be a little dust. But there's also something stirring in our hearts and souls, in your hearts and souls. And we don't have to make anything happen. We get to allow it into the spaciousness of our lives. And into that space, more joy and more love and laughter, more light, more kindness and compassion, more love, more authenticity. And so I ask you this morning, what is it within you that's awake and pushing up against what has been? Old fear, judgment, roles and responsibilities. Shoulds and should not. I just bumped into that again this morning. When I was getting ready, something in me said, You should wear a suit. And something said, should not. Are we listening? Are we paying attention? What's begging for a permission for space to be real and wild and fabulously alive? There's no shortage of realness and of life. What's standing between me and that? And what if I choose right here and now, as I sit here this morning, to say yes to life, to allow myself to be spacious? Spaciousness as a spiritual practice, to walk out that door into our world, breathing a little deeper and stepping a little lighter, smiling a little easier. I don't know what the invitation is in you, but I know it's in there. That still, small voice that may not be so still or so small anymore. We've awakened it. We've allowed it. We've invited it. And here we are with it, divine discontent informing us. Are we paying attention? And are we willing, really willing, to follow where it leads? I want to close this morning with a thought from an old Persian friend by the name of Rumi, who says this: the breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and it's open now. Don't go back to sleep. That's the invitation. I've asked Chris to help us close in prayer, so I invite you to take a breath.
I listen to the part of me that knows my path is laid before me, showing me which way to go. I needn't wonder if I'll be guided home. Every choice along the road, God will always show when I listen to the part of me that knows.
For there is that within every mind and body and heart and soul, the presence of life itself, informing, inviting. That still small voice, persistent, insistent. Nothing has gone wrong. Merely an invitation to step beyond what has been into what is aching to be. So I speak this word of intention for myself and anyone who chooses it as their own, to simply say yes. I allow that. I trust it. I recognize it for what it is. I allow myself to be informed. I allow myself to be spacious. I allow myself to be more of what I've always been, the light and the love and the good of God, having found a place to celebrate itself. We know it to be good.
I listen to the part of me that knows my path is laid before me, showing me which way to go. I needn't wonder if I'll be guided home. Every choice along the road, God will always show when I listen to the part of me that knows.
And so it is. Amen.